All right, welcome to the Grab Your Gear podcast. We've got Jack Windsor here. I'm Ted Duggar, and we're going to do a little bit of a recap of the 2024 presidential election. Just going to highlight a couple things, where some things went right, some went wrong, where we're going forward. Jack, what's the big takeaway?
The big takeaway is America won last night, and this might be the biggest victory from top of the ticket to bottom that I've been through, certainly in America, but also here in the Buckeye State. I don't know what the results are on the U.S. House. It sounded promising that Republicans are going to...
looking Republican.
So they'll have the opportunity, Republicans that is, they have a second chance here. And I think that's huge. And we can talk more about this in just a moment. But I think it's also an indictment of the Democratic Party as well as the mainstream press.
You know, the whole lead up to the election, everybody was saying, conservatives were saying it's going to be a Trump landslide. Democrats were saying it's going to be a Democrats landslide. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a landslide, but Trump won very convincingly. And I don't think that the Democrats anticipated that Trump would pick up Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and it's leaning toward Arizona and Nevada for Trump. I don't think they anticipated that at all.
No, I don't think they did either. And I think the thing that they were trying to convince themselves with was that pollsters and even conservatives were putting their thumb on the scale more this election cycle. So if Trump was up slightly, it wasn't because previously he had overperformed polls. And they were saying, well, no, that's not going to happen this time, because they have, they're figuring out how to poll him, their, thumb on the scale, and that ended up being completely wrong again. In fact, there was one pollster who was off by like 16 points. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, I mean, the Ann Seltzer.
Yeah, that's
Iowa.
She
had 14.
Had her winning by 3.
And then
Trump
losing,
13.
That's just ridiculous.
So, yes, it's. I had it on my bingo card that he could sweep the battleground states. I really did, but I just was not. I grew up a Browns fan, and so I remember the drive.
So you used to let downs.
Yes, I'm used to let downs. So you don't pack your gear early when you're ahead in the game.
Right.
You just don't do it. I thought it could happen, but when they called Pennsylvania last night, I thought, this is it. It's over. Over.
One of the things I wanted to kind of talk about, and we had talked about a little bit in the studio, was, and you highlighted it a little bit, was the polling for this. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest takeaways is legacy media got this wrong, way wrong again. And I think if you look at the last month and a half, what was kind of the deciding factor between Trump and Kamala? Trump and J.D. Vance went on Joe Rogan. They went on Theo Vaughn. They did the Nelk Boys. They said, great, an opportunity for me to speak to tens of millions of people unfettered without having to, well, you said this 6 years ago, so defend it now.
Yeah.
And I think it was a huge indictment on legacy media. And going forward, I don't know what the next election is going to look like, having that in mind.
I'm a little giddy as the founder and editor-in-chief of the Ohio Press Network and host of the Windsor Report, because we are independent, we're non-traditional. And I look at it on two levels. In Ohio, Issue 1 was on the ballot last night. Issue 1 would have radically changed the way that our congressional and state house legislative maps are drawn. It would have put that drawing in the hands of bureaucrats who, let's face it, we're going to color the maps blue. And that initiative raised $40 million from the usual dark money globalists, right? And it looked like it was going to win. And so bringing it around the barn, you had the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Columbus Dispatch, the Cincinnati Enquirer, Dayton Daily News, and the Toledo Blade all endorsed Issue 1. I said this yesterday. those newspapers are dinosaurs. Nobody's reading them. Issue 1 failed by 9 points.
Subscriber rates are down across the board.
And when you look at the mainstream press, whether it's CNN, whether it's Washington Post, the New York Times, they are irrelevant. For almost a decade, they've talked about Russia collusion. They've talked about January 6th insurrection. They've talked about him being a felon. They've called Trump and his supporters Nazis.
The Covington, Kentucky kids, Michael Brown.
Yes.
They just keep getting it wrong and hope that no one notices.
And no one is noticing because nobody's listening. I think they're listening. They're not taking them seriously anymore.
Right.
And legacy media is dead.
Well, and I think one of the things kind of with legacy media that's interesting is you have what, USA Today, the LA Times, and was it the Washington Post, who didn't endorse Kamala. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. I think a lot of people in the media saw the writing on the wall that Trump was going to win. Yep. And they made a business decision
100%.
To say, let's not piss off the guy who is probably gonna change some things in the government. I think that was a very strategic move by them, and I think legacy media calling this wrong again was just another indictment on them. And it was so important is this election doesn't happen if Elon doesn't buy Twitter.
That was a game changer, everything from Twitter files, when he released some very valuable information that proved to people who suspected in 2020 that the federal government and the pro-Biden elitists were trying to censor everybody. It proved that, but more importantly, Twitter became a place where things could be checked. And as much as Mark Zuckerberg wanted to say, hey, we don't want to be interfering in this election game again at Facebook, newsflash, they still do. Baked into their AI is suppression of certain types of information. We've dealt with it as a news outlet. But X gave people the opportunity to operate under their First Amendment right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that won last night in this election. The First Amendment and free speech won.
I mean, you have people on MSNBC and ABC saying that that Donald Trump winning was it was the Ladies of the View, the Rhodes Scholars of the Ladies of the View, said that there needs to be regulation on these. I mean, they're not social media; they're free speech platforms, or at least they should be.
It should be.
And not having guardrails on what people can and cannot say. I mean, for the past couple weeks, it was, well, Trump said that he wants to shoot Liz Cheney. No, he didn't. And here's the clip that he showed. You weren't able to do that a couple years ago.
That's right.
Where you couldn't bring up the receipts.
Yep.
And now you can. And I think that is a great equalizer in trying to combat legacy media.
100%. I'm interested to see where news and information goes in the next 4 years to 8 years. It's an exciting time because in some regard, the internet and social media apps and other platforms have been around for a while, but it almost still feels like the Wild Wild West, where there's an opportunity here to really continue to develop and create content on platforms where people reward the truth. They reward the free flow of information. And that's what, last night was, look, you have to, whenever there is a hot contest, it's not less speech that makes the outcome better, it's more speech. And so I'm excited to see where all of this goes in that vein.
One of the interesting things that I've kind of been following on Twitter is, so as of, it's Wednesday morning at 1:30 p.m., Kamala Harris has a little over 67 million votes. That's 14 million less votes than Biden got in 2020. Those 14 million votes didn't go to Trump, a couple million. Where did those 13 million votes go? 14 million.
Is that indicative of low turnout? I don't. That's a lot of votes. I mean,
And I think that will be investigated and looked at
It has to.
in the next 4 years.
it has to.
And I think the Democrats have to look at it and go, how did we lose 14 million votes?
Yes, and if we're going to look at it,
And we're dancing around it.
We need to look
Yes.
at it. But talking about the narrative that the View and the progressive left, mainstream press outlets love to talk about is, holding people accountable and in check. When in reality, if they really believe that, then we need to hold people accountable and in check. Every one of them got it wrong with COVID. Every one of them talked about how people were lunatics in 2020 if you felt like you were being censored as a conservative, and if people were putting their thumbs on the scale. Well, Twitter files, Facebook files, YouTube files, Amazon files all prove that. The Hunter Biden laptop, proven.
That in the Hunter Biden laptop, enough independent voters had said, if that hadn't been suppressed, I would have voted for Trump. That was enough that would have gotten Trump to win.
Yep.
But Isabella and I were talking about it earlier in the day. Trump losing the 2020 election, and I know it sucks because Americans have been feeling it in their wallets.
Yeah.
You're getting a better Trump candidate in 24, and you'll get a better Trump candidate in 24 than you would have gotten in 2020, because I think it weeded out some of the people that were not necessarily yes men for Trump, but didn't bring enough to the table. And I think, you get Elon, Tulsi, Vivek, RFK. I don't think you get any of those from 2020. And there's a lot of people that have said in this election, I'm not voting for Trump. I'm voting for the group. I'm voting for the coalition.
Someone asked me that question today on the way into the studios on a phone call, and we were talking about Tulsi Gabbard, and he said, do you think that really made a difference? Do you think? And I said, here's why I think Tulsi Gabbard made a difference. We have been, and this is what makes last night incredible too, we've been gaslit for a long time. And just imagine, the press is fully in the tank for the left. Imagine if the press actually did its job. How things would look so much differently. But the bottom line is, if you wore this hat, if you talked about supporting Trump, you were exposing yourself for ridicule, marginalization, just guilting, shaming, being canceled. Tulsi Gabbard, I think, represents a fair-minded person, and when people like that come forward, it gives people the permission to go, okay, it's all right. I'm not crazy. It's okay that I vote for him. It's okay that I'm backing this guy.
Well, that's okay to say. I'm a centrist. Donald Trump dominated the centrist vote.
Yep.
And the left, it's the right's gone so far right, or the center right has moved. You can't even see where the Democratic Party is left now. And I think a lot of people got really scared and said, I don't like Trump, but I'm going to vote for these policies that seem normal to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think the part that they might be shocked about is he won on democracy. They wanted to make this race about preserving democracy. Well, he won on that. He won on the border. He won on the economy. He won on international affairs. One of the interesting things I'm excited about, real quick,
go ahead.
is I'm interested to see what Israel is going to be like. I'm interested to see what Ukraine and Russia will be like in the next 6 months.
I think it was I saw it on Twitter, so who knows if it's real, but that Putin has already said he is excited to talk peace talks with Trump. And I was telling Isabella earlier that it seemed like it was going to be a Carter-Reagan hostage situation where wait for Jimmy Carter to get out of office, then Reagan comes in and gets the hostages released. I think that's going to happen with Ukraine and Russia. One of the things that you said was Trump won on democracy. One of the biggest things from 2016 was, well, Donald Trump didn't win the popular vote. Let's, for 8 years they've said, let's blow up the Electoral College. Well, Trump won the popular vote by a lot.
Yeah.
He won the Electoral College by a lot. So what are they gonna blame it on, or say that they need to change going forward?
At the end of the day, and by the way, I'm looking at this and I'm smiling because we've seen the Kamala 47 signs. They got it right. What they meant was she was going to get 47% of the of the total vote. Well done. This is one of those moments where, again, if you're a member of the mainstream press, you look in the mirror, and I think you got to have a coming to Jesus talk. And I had this conversation with centrists and Democrats here in the Buckeye State, because one of the things that we heard a lot with issue 1 in Ohio was the maps are unfairly gerrymandered. And I said, BS. It's, I grew up a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, and Cavaliers fans always used to say in the 80s that Michael Jordan cheated. He always took the extra step. Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player of all time. I don't care how you slice it. When Democrats say maps are unfairly gerrymandered, what they're doing is they're sounding a lot like the Cleveland Cavaliers fans in the 80s. The reality is the Democrats believe that men should play in women's sports. They believe men can have babies. They believe that children should take puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, cut off healthy body parts. They don't believe that the border should be shored up. They believe that our tax dollars should go to places like Ukraine and to illegals or temporary migrants that come into the country, and that we should give our jobs to those people over Americans. Maps aren't gerrymandered. Their policies suck. And at the end of the day, if they don't get that messaging here, I believe, I said this with Joe the other day, whether Trump won or not, what you saw with Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Elon, Joe Rogan, is the beginning of Americans standing up behind the idea that we're not going to bow to the Marxist globalists. And if the Democrats don't get that message, this might be, not only, as Trump said in his speech, the golden age for America, it might be a really long, dark time for Democrats.
And I think what kind of you were talking about was, Donald Trump's put together a group of people who are not on the same ideological spot.
Right.
Those people that you listed, they're not all in the same camp.
No.
And I think that that's a good thing to bring to an administration. Okay, so a couple cabinet things. Where do you see some cabinet places being filled?
It's a great question. I think the one that most people are excited about is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Department of Health and Human Services, getting our food supply healthy again, making changes in pharma. So I think that's big. I think there's a lot of speculation about Vivek Ramaswamy, whether it is Department of Commerce or Treasury. And then I think Elon Musk is going to play a role. He's going to be the guy crunching the numbers that says this department's going to go and this has got to go, and we're going to slim this thing down. And by the way, that is probably the most important thing, in addition to the border, that Trump can do.
Yep.
You cannot continue deficit spending $2 trillion a year when you have a $35 trillion debt load. So that's going to be huge. What do you think? Those are the three that come to my mind.
That's kind of what I was thinking. The Elon will be in some kind of role, a special advisor. They'll create the government accountability project or something that gets rid of the government waste. Tulsi, I really don't know. One of the interesting ones I was kind of thinking about, not a cabinet position, was White House spokesperson. I think Scott Jennings has that in the bag.
I think that's a strong
idea.
Strong recommendation.
He went on CNN for 4 months, and it was 1 on 7, and he talked them into a corner. I think that would be a good get. Kash Patel, do you hire him at CIA?
CIA, DOJ, something.
Something. But, if Kamala would have won, Whoopi wanted Liz Cheney to be the head of the DOJ, the CIA, and the FBI. So there is that.
Yeah, I mean, since the intelligence apparatus is already weaponized, you might as well put a war hawk over him.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
Where does the Democratic Party start to look at where it went wrong? Was it swapping out the lowest approval rating vice president 110 days before the election? Was it the only stance that anybody understood for the Democratic Party was abortion, which Kamala can't change, which Donald Trump isn't going to change? Where does the blame lie for the Democratic Party?
Well, I think the blame lies in a couple of areas, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond to this. One, they are just simply too extreme. Yeah. I mean, this is not, you don't have a country if you don't have a border, and tax dollars should benefit taxpayers. I mean, this is like real simple math stuff, and we don't allow kids to smoke or drink or get tattoos or drive a car or enroll in the military. Why would we allow them to make life-altering decisions with drugs or cutting off body parts? Like, they have gone so far left, they have to recognize that. But where they've been exposed, this is what's going to be interesting. If you were the person in an elected office as a Democrat and you were talking about Donald Trump being a Nazi and or being Hitler and his supporters being Nazis, then you better damn well not approve the election. Because if you really believe that, there's no way that you can certify the election, number one. And then number two, if you believe that in the press, then you better continue saying it. Right. They won't continue saying it because maybe they believe it, maybe they don't. But the whole point in all of that is you have lost credibility, totally, in my book. And I think fair-minded people look at that and go, you can't have it both ways.
Right. You just can't. And I think that's you're probably pretty right on that. That if it's a problem, as much as they've been saying, then you kind of need action.
And by the way, you recruited a guy in your vice president that is a lot like you, which is a really smart move. It's a really good insurance policy.
Absolutely.
But then you look at the people going, I'm going to go back to this, the Joe Rogans of the world, the RFKs of the world, the Tulsi Gabbards of the world. Authoritarians don't surround themselves with people who have a diverse basket of beliefs.
Or that openly disagree with.
That's right. And, for example, RFK Jr. will do fantastic at making America healthy again if he has the authority to do some things.
Don't let him go anywhere else.
Right.
Don't let him
do his abortion.
Right.
Stands,
don't do anything else. But if it's that one thing, great.
And that really is what politics is about. It's the art of decision making, and it really is the art of assembling a team. Like, if you're a left tackle, I'm not going to put you out at wide receiver. That's not your role. And so I think Trump doing what he has done, and I want to go back to what you said earlier, has been impressive on the campaign trail. And I think you're absolutely right. He's ready in 2024 to do what he was not ready to do in 2020, which is put a team in place that can actually make a huge impact on Washington, D.C. that has never been tried and done effectively.
And I think it's also important that, Trump and RFK Jr., for instance, they agree on the health stuff.
Yep.
So put him in that role to do that. And I think what he kind of has said that he, on the Joe Rogan's podcast, said that he put people, I was told this would be a good person for this, and it wasn't. This person wasn't really qualified or wasn't good at da-da-da-da-da. But I think that getting people earmarking for this specific thing, I think will be good for him. Anything else? Any other takeaways from last night?
Just it's one of the biggest victories I've ever experienced, and it was resounding. And what I will be interested to see, and a little bit anxious to see, frankly, is what do Republicans do? Because if they don't get it right, their party is just as much at risk as the Democrats, because Americans have voted. They want a secure border. They want an economy that's fixed. They want energy unleashed, and frankly, they want a federal government that's smaller and less powerful. And if Republicans can't rein in spending and make those administrative state cuts, they're going to piss down their legs again.
Yep.
Like the last time they were in majority.
Yeah. One other thing, I saw that Kamala didn't flip a county that Biden did in 20.
I mean, this goes again to one of the most unpopular vice presidents in the history of
the most.
Was she the? Okay.
Yes.
I knew that there were a couple that were kind of. So
at one point in time, she was the lowest.
Okay. And she goes from that to she's now an incredible spokeswoman. And like what has been done with her through that party?
By the way, are you unburdening something that had?
We are looking toward the future, unburdened by what has been.
By the passage of time.
But you look at it and you go, it's just another fake thing.
Yeah.
And that is to me the party's fake. They cried about democracy. The lady didn't get one primary vote, and she's their candidate, and says that Joe Biden is sharp as a tack.
Right.
But then he's not fit to run for. I mean, it's just. And then when the press gets involved and they lie and spin. I mean, this is what gives me hope, because we talked about this. Imagine if a candidate can get on the ballot a month and a half, 2 months from the election, and with all she had on her side was the press branding her. That's it. That's what lost last.
There was joy for about 2 weeks.
Yeah. Joy that, he was going to lose. And the idea was, can we drum up enough, emotion to? No, that didn't last.
And I think that they thought they could carry with the abortion that would be enough, because that's the only thing that Republicans are not ahead on policy-wise.
Yep.
For the most part, the country wants. 80+% of Americans want voter ID.
And they want illegals deported. They want a closed border, right? These are the things that they want. And interestingly, I think many people thought Florida was going to be pretty close. Florida was not close, and Florida had abortion on the ballot. And in 2022, abortion did affect the midterm elections. I believe
absolutely.
That. Dobbs, reversing Roe v. Wade.
There were people out in 2022 that were only out for abortion, and then they voted straight Democrat ticket, and that's why that red wave in 22 didn't happen.
And I think it's really settling in. And shame on the press again. We said from day one, Roe v. Wade did not make abortion illegal. It said that states have a right to make that choice, and there are some places like Ohio, which has a Republican trifecta, has the most liberal abortion permissions of the entire country. And abortions have actually gone up since the Roe v. Wade reversal in Dobbs. So I think people are starting to go, okay, they had Orange Man bad. That didn't work. All the lawfare in the world couldn't bring that to pass. And now they're beating the abortion drum, and they don't have that. They don't have policies. They have identity politics.
Yep. And I think they're figuring out that identity politics of 2020, that's gone. That's gone.
I don't know if you saw this. I heard it. It might be a rumor, so I'm going to check with you. So let's go back to Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And Kill Tony makes the comment about floating island of trash. Well, that was going to cost Trump the election with the Latino voters, the Puerto Ricans, right? Everybody, Venezuelans, anybody south. Didn't he actually pull more votes?
Yes, he did.
So again, it's not working. Black males showed up for Donald Trump.
25% of black men voted in Fulton County for Trump. 25%. Chicago, I think it was 18%. And they want to say, well, it's, racist whites who wouldn't vote for Kamala. No, it's not. I mean, you had higher voter turnout for Trump, black men, black women, Hispanic men, Hispanic women, Jewish men, Jewish women. In 4 years, they all went right and picked up votes.
And there's a tipping point, right? And I think 25% might be that tipping point. I think that is enough that, because you could argue, well, yeah, but there's still 75%. But there's a point where you bring over much more support more quickly, and I think that this Trump administration has reached that point. I think the Democrats are losing black voters and are at risk of losing the black vote like they never have been before.
Yep. Anything else post election going forward? What does the next couple months look like? What does 4 years of Trump look like, and what's he need to do to make sure that 2028 is probably going to be J.D. Vance's run?
Well, I think he's got to be decisive on the things that he can be decisive on. Mm-hmm. He's got to close the border. He's got to unleash energy. He can do some of that through executive order. He's got to command that his Department of Homeland Security secretary, enforces border law. By the way, we don't need new border laws. We need to enforce the border laws
that we have on the books. Yep.
I think if he does those things out of the gate, I think that's important, and it's going to be critical for the House to actually step into the role as thin of a majority as they're going to have to curb spending, to allow some of the stuff that needs to happen legislatively to happen. The thing that also needs to happen, Donald Trump has a lot of representation in the Senate.
Yeah.
And he should be filling benches all over the country. Get the woke federal prosecutors, get the woke federal judges out and replace them.
Who's the oldest Supreme Court justice right now?
Is it Sotomayor? I don't know. That's a great question. Let's look that up.
Because if Trump gets another opportunity to put up almost, let's see.
Is it Clarence Thomas? Is he 75? Okay. I was off on Sotomayor, wasn't I?
Wow.
She's 70.
Alito's 74.
74, yeah.
So if Trump is able to get another Supreme Court justice, if somebody steps down, which I don't...
In this case, it might be a Republican, so he'd be replacing an R with an
right,
R. Or a conservative with a conservative.
Right, but it's not going to be Clarence Thomas. It probably wouldn't be Alito. So he probably won't unless somebody dies, which would be unfortunate.
Yeah.
But that would be really interesting going forward.
It really would be. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen. But he has a chance to really stack the federal court system and appoint some judges that, let's face it, some of the lawfare that has gone on is unbelievable. The cases that were brought forward, first of all, are insane. The way they were prosecuted.
Those will go away quick.
They should go away quick.
And
I would say that if Trump was a Democrat. It is absolutely insane to weaponize the justice system against a political ideology or opponent. That's not justice. That's Marxism. That's authoritarianism.
Can't have it.
To stop.
Yep. All right. Well, Jack Windsor, thank you very much. Where can we find you, Jack?
The Ohio Press Network go to theohiopressnetwork.com. That's theohiopressnetwork.com. And while you're there, subscribe because that helps us continue to hire reporters and syndicate content. And then the Windsor Report on 989theanswer.com. That's 989theanswer.com. Search up the Windsor Report. All of our past episodes are there. It's a daily drive time show, so you get an hour of me every day talking people, politics, and policies here in the Buckeye State, but of course around America.
Perfect. I'm Ted Duggar, Grab Your Gear Network podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our social platforms. Follow Jack. We'll be keep working together, make sure still moving in the right direction. Thank you very much. American people had their voices heard and they chose Trump. So have a good afternoon.